This short walkthrough video will describe the process of deploying and configuring the demo solution for integrating Azure API Management with the Adyen payment gateway. Before you get started, you'll need the following: an Adyen account, preferably a test account if you're still evaluating this process, an Azure subscription, with permissions to deploy resources and create service principals, PowerShell and the Azure CLI in order to run the necessary command line scripts. The supporting artifacts for this walkthrough are available in GitHub in the Azure API Management Monetization repository under the Microsoft organization. You'll also need to clone or download the repository artifacts. The process that we'll be following in this video is documented in the Deploy Demo with Adyen Markdown file, which is referenced in the main README document in the repository. It's a good idea to have the associated documentation for this setup process to hand, so that you can copy and paste the necessary commands that are shown in the video as we go through the later steps. We'll start by logging into our Adyen account. And if you don't have one already, creating a merchant account for an e-commerce channel. We'll come back to this account later in the setup process. The next stage is to create a service principal, which will act as a privileged credential that our web application will use to talk to API management. We're going to use the Azure CLI inside PowerShell, and the first thing we need to do is to connect to our Azure subscription using the AZ login command. If you have access to multiple subscriptions, then you can set the subscription context using the AZ account set command, passing in the relevant subscription ID. We can now create the new service principal. This command will return some sensitive information that you'll need to temporarily copy and store for later use. Now we want to visit the demo solution repository on GitHub. The main README file contains a link to the Deploy Demo with Adyen documentation, which are the set of instructions that we're following in this video. About halfway down the page is a Deploy to Azure button. Clicking this button will initiate the process of capturing all of the parameters that we need to provide to this deployment script to deploy the resources. We'll need to pick the subscription, the resource group, and the region that we want to deploy into. We'll then need to set the resource name for the API management service that we're going to deploy. We'll need to provide an email address for an administrator for the API management service, and a name for our company publishing the API, which will appear in places like the publisher portal. We'll need to set which SKU for API management we want to provision, and then provide a name and SKU details for the app service that hosts our demo solution. Finally, we'll need to configure the payment provider details. Firstly, that we're using Adyen as our payment gateway. And then we need to head back to the Adyen portal, under the Developer tab, in order to generate an API key for the web service. We'll also need the client key value. And the merchant account name. We now need to retrieve a few ID values from our service principal that we created earlier, some of which we stored for later use. Using the AZ-AD-SP show command in the Azure CLI, we can obtain the service principal's app ID, object ID, and the app owner tenant ID. These can all be added to the deployment parameters, along with the client secret password that was returned when the service principal was created. At this point, we can now review and trigger the deployment. Azure API Management typically takes about half an hour to deploy, and we'll receive an email at the administrator address that was provided earlier when it's complete. Once the web application has been deployed, we need to add its URL to the list of allowed origins for our merchant account web service. This is the URL of the app service that was deployed as part of the demo solution. The next stage is to publish the developer portal for API management. We can do that by going to the API management resource in Azure and selecting the developer portal option. Under the Operations menu, there's an option to publish the website, and that takes a few seconds to complete. The final thing we're going to do is go through the developer experience of signing up to use our API. We're using an anonymous browsing session here to simulate a different person connecting to the public-facing API Management developer portal. We're going to sign up the developer as a new user, providing a name, email address, and a strong password. Once they've signed up, they're now logged into the developer portal, and they can review or browse the products that are available. To subscribe to the basic product, they just need to agree to the terms of use and select Subscribe. They need to provide a unique name for this subscription, and this is because there might be multiple subscriptions for the same product for different use cases. Once they've provided that name, they're automatically directed to the Adyen payment portal, where they can provide credit card details. Adyen provides dummy card details which can be used for testing purposes. Once the payment has been authorized, they're redirected back to the API Management developer portal. And if they look at their profile, they can see they now have an active subscription to the basic product, which gives them access to the API key. This is a key they will use to authenticate against our API. And if we switch back to the Adyen dashboard, we can see the details of the transaction that was authorized. That's the end of this walkthrough. For more details and other supporting documentation, including a similar demo solution with a Stripe payment provider, please refer back to the associated GitHub repository. Thank you.